I saw a blind man on the bus earlier today. Well, I was on the bus. For his part, he was out there on the sidewalk. And he was managing as best as he could, and was doing fairly well for himself, all things considered. Although he did almost step in front of the bus as it was pulling away from the stop, and he did almost step off the curb into oncoming traffic. Now, as I observed all of this, what was impressed upon me was the sheer vulnerability and the raw exposure of all of it. Now, as I say this to you, I'm not suggesting anything in terms of impairment or being handicapped on the part of this individual. No. I mean the exposure and the vulnerability which is imposed upon all of us, upon you, upon him, upon myself, upon everybody, by this world and by the people who frequent it. You see, that's where the real impairment rests. That's where the real inequity, the real imbalance is to be found. And the only counterpoint against it amounts to your senses and your sensibilities, whatever they happen to be. Now, the whole episode put me in mind of something from years and years ago, way back when I used to live downtown, in fact, in a little tenement room. Back then, my days were directed by a specific calendar, each and every day of which was outfitted to entail a specific activity. Every day of the month, throughout the entire year. Each day a new project, a new task, a new chore. Try a new recipe. Watch a new movie. Take a needle and thread and sew something together that needed to be mended. Tasks along those lines. Very simple, menial stuff, but meaningful just the same as they amounted, as the days went by, to time well spent. Now I can recollect that one day, each and every month, there was a day set aside for an activity which was simply labeled One Blind Hour. Now, I don't pretend to be the originator of this idea. I think I came across it in an old magazine somewhere, years before that. But basically what it amounted to was, take 1 hour out of your day, and if you happen to be endowed with eyesight, pass that 60 minutes without your eyes. It was an experiment, I suppose, intended to evoke empathy of a sort for people who were, in a word, blind, who did not have eyesight. And it was an attempt, I suppose, to illustrate what that experience is like. It's been so many years, I actually don't remember much about the experiment for myself. What I used to do is I would take one of these eye shades. You see people put these on when they go to bed and attempt to get some sleep in an effort to blot out any source of light, any kind of illumination. And even then I would keep my eyes shut behind them, because I'm here to tell you these are not especially efficient in keeping out every last little bit of light. I never ventured outside of my room. It was a very limited experiment, not especially adventurous, but it was an experience just the same. Knowing the environment as well as I did, I was able to find my way around, and I think I would wash the dishes, knowing where the sink and the dishes and the dish soap were. I think I did some laundry. I know I folded laundry. I remember sensing the textures of, for instance, socks and matching each pair together. Setting out clothes for the next day, knowing from the feel of it which cufflinks I wanted to wear on the morrow. Not to be crass, I didn't spend the time with the television turned on or with a new videotape playing, because I did not discern any point in doing that. I did, however, have the radio going, not only for the music, but because the easy listening station, which I tuned into way back then, long since off the air, at the top of each hour, they would play a song, and then they would broadcast the weather forecast. And that's how I knew when the hour was up. that was my brief, limited experience into a reality devoid of sight. And with absolutely no pun intended, this isn't even a glimpse into what it would be like if you have ever had eyesight and then, for whatever reason, lost it. The whole point of this editorial today should be rather self-evident in that what we're working towards is something which you should already know for yourselves. In this world, obstacles will be presented to you. Any number of obstructions will be thrown into your literal or metaphorical path. And your way of traversing this world is going to be determined by your senses and your sensibilities. Now, some of us possess eyesight, myself included. Although I have come to find that it is very much diminished as the years go by, I can see. There are those, however, who do not possess eyesight. But herein and again, this is not to say that they are impaired or that they are handicapped. All which this means is that they are outfitted differently, that they have different ways with which to cope and to contend. The upshot to all of this is really quite straightforward. Whatever your senses and sensibilities might be for you, it falls to you to utilize them as best as you can, not merely for yourselves, but for everybody else who you encounter along your way. By virtue of simple awareness, basic perception, conscientious commiseration of just being mindful of others. In this way, senses and sensibilities meld together and they become sensitivity. And that is the binding and mutual sensation which unites everybody in the common struggle against all of that vulnerability and against all of the exposure imposed upon us all.